Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to another video. We have some information regarding Kathleen Kennedy and her news on the next Obi-Wan Kenobi season 2. And it's not looking too good for us, so let's get right into it. Speaking on Entertainment Weekly's Dagobah Dispatch podcast, the Lucasfilm boss was asked about whether a season 2 is possible. I always hesitate to say, no, we don't do anything more with Obi-Wan Kenobi, she replied. Maybe what we end up doing is something that gets incorporated into some of the other stories we're doing, or eventually into a movie. Who knows? So, two big things here. The first, of course, being sad that, we won't get probably an Obi-Wan Kenobi season 2. The first season, in my opinion, I loved having Ewan McGregor back. I loved having Hayden back. Those are my two favorite guys, probably in the world in terms of acting. But as for their characters, it doesn't get better than the prequel trilogy, in my opinion. And it was really beautiful to see them return in Star Wars. As for the story and the directing, you guys know how I feel about that. I felt like it just really didn't do them justice and didn't tell the story that I feel like George would have told during this time. As for the directing itself, just wasn't a fan of it. But this is kind of like good and bad news. So we won't be getting season 2 most likely, which was weird because the numbers were great, at least for the beginning, the opening premiere. But she does say that maybe we'll end up incorporating Obi-Wan Kenobi into a spin-off show or something like that. So he could show up in, let's say, the Ahsoka show if there's some sort of a flashback, right? So we could maybe not get Obi-Wan, protecting Luke, but we'll get him during the Clone Wars. Maybe we'll see him on Tatooine as well if we go in that era, in that time period, with any of the shows going forwards in terms of a flashback, or if they want to release shows during that time. For example, Andor Season 2. This is a time period before A New Hope where Obi-Wan is still very, of course, prominent and out there and alive. So really they have up until, well, actually, they could make him return as a Force ghost whenever they want. So they could do it in, the Rey movie. They could do it in really any show that they choose. We could even have it in the Ahsoka show if they so wish. It just has to be like a proper moment. But personally, I think that we'll get to see him a decent amount going forwards in shows. I don't think, the idea of him showing up in the Ahsoka show is really too far-fetched. I think it's definitely a big possibility, and I'm really looking forward to seeing it. Now, the second thing I want to discuss here is the fact that she says eventually into a movie. What kind of a movie has Obi-Wan Kenobi in it, besides maybe the Rey movie where he shows up as a Force ghost? The reason I say that is because of his words to Rey in The Force Awakens, which they had played with the original idea, that Obi-Wan Kenobi was going to be Rey's father or grandfather. Now, if you remember when she grabbed the lightsaber, it said, "These are your first steps." And it was Obi-Wan's voice. It was a mixture of Alec Guinness, Ewan McGregor, and they blended them together. And so it made us all think like, oh, okay, Obi-Wan's around. This is it. This is him. Which, of course, they changed because of the sequel trilogy's absolutely disastrous writing and cooperation between the directors and the entire team of Disney and Lucasfilm just shitting the bed completely on that, which resulted in this massive divide of the fandom. She goes on to say, but right now, it's still our standalone limited series. We have no plans for expansion right now. I mean, the character of Obi-Wan Kenobi is one of the most important characters in Star Wars, and I think him, Anakin Skywalker, and Luke Skywalker will show up many more times in future Star Wars projects. It just depends on what kind of show they're going to show up in, and also, what is this movie? Now, besides the Rey movie, what movie could we be getting? Who knows? Did she just let something slip that maybe we'll get like some prequel trilogy movie or a continuation between episode 3 and 4? Or will there be some project between 4, 5, and 6 that we don't know about where Obi-Wan could show up? Will it be in Andor? Will we get another Rogue One movie, so to speak, maybe a prequel? Who knows what? So that really stuck out to me, the fact that she's saying, hey, maybe a movie. Is this Dave's movie? It could very well be. It could very well be that Obi-Wan will show up as a Force ghost in Dave Filoni's movie, which takes place a few years after Return of the Jedi, during the time of Ahsoka, Mando, Boba Fett, all this and that. So it is very possible that we do see him in that movie. As for any others, well, they have yet to be announced. So last year, Obi-Wan Kenobi writer and executive producer Joby Harold was asked about the possibility of a second season 2. I'm being asked about it constantly, he said. I've just been thinking about this for so long as a close-ended story that my mind is so focused on this as a sort of limited series that I haven't thought beyond it. But he's a great character. They're all amazing characters. Well, yeah, duh. But look, there is no close-ended story here with Obi-Wan. There are continuous stories, as we've seen in the comics, in the Legends books, Legends comics, even the new comics of Obi-Wan on Tatooine, and the very many things that he has to deal with in saving Luke and protecting Luke and the Larses. So, whether that be against, crazy Tusken Raiders, or, the water tax being thrown on moisture farmers from Jabba's thugs. There's a lot going on there that could have been turned into, a spin-off or something like that. As for what they did with Kenobi, dude, I was really disappointed. Like, there were some really cool scenes that I enjoyed. Of course, Anakin and Obi-Wan, having that moment together at the end, the flashback stuff. Overall, the shaky cam stuff, that in itself was disastrous, took you right out of it. It didn't increase the tension or anything like that the director probably thought it would. The overall trajectory and the focus of the show, Reva, so much focus on Reva, just a really trash character in my opinion that is interjected into the storyline and put the spotlight on her when it should have been on Obi-Wan and Vader. Now, her telling Obi-Wan that Vader is Anakin and survived and all this and that, big mistake in my opinion. I think they should have gone the route of the Legends novel, which I've sourced many times in videos, which has a lot of really interesting information regarding how Obi-Wan found out that Vader exists from the book Dark Lord, The Rise of Darth Vader by James Luceno, released in 2005. This book was released during the time of Revenge of the Sith, which also released in 2005. In my head, that book is canon, and all of this other stuff is just Disney trying to figure something out to, make some money and make some Disney Plus stuff. But in my opinion, I don't think it's really what George would have intended. They're incorporating things, pulling on our heartstrings like they did with Qui-Gon showing up at the end and all this and that. But when you really pick it apart and look at it, you're like, let's get rid of the nostalgia. Let's get rid of the fact that, our awesome favorite characters are in here, Anakin and Obi-Wan, Hayden and Ewan are back. Let's take that out and let's really examine, like, what the hell did I just watch? I waited so many years for these guys to return, and we're just focusing on this crappy Inquisitor who really doesn't sell the role. And then we're focusing on all of these weird things that are happening in terms of, like, the strange decisions that Obi-Wan is making. Like, he's first of all disillusioned with the Force. He's cut himself off. Like, he just doesn't care anymore. And he's like this very docile, afraid person. And it seems to be their cookie cutter method. Disney does two things. They cut the dude off who's powerful from the Force, make him weak so that he has some sort of a triumphant return, but his return is no better than he was before, or if anything, he's like dead, like Luke. And it dies in some lame way. Or they just create some father-son relationship and with like a cute little child, and then they think that that's going to garner a lot of views, but eventually that gets old, right? So remember, like, Mandalorian Season 3 really wasn't that big of a hit. It was okay, in my opinion, but it just wasn't anything like the creativity and beauty that was Season 1 and 2. So I think going forwards, they really need to focus on these proper characters, not have slapstick comedy of lightsabers bouncing, people hitting stormtroopers like this, and then the stormtrooper gets disoriented. Make all the fun you want of stormtroopers, but in some shows, they're actually pretty damn good. Like Andor, they were good. They came in there and they looked really legit. They were making shots. They were executing things well. Unlike the previous, I forgot what they were, the previous security company that came in there and just didn't know what the hell they were doing with Cyril, right? The one that Cyril was in charge of or leading. Obi-Wan with putting Leia in his trench coat, and it's like, how does no one notice? It just, all of it was just really comical, and everything, with the thugs trying to capture little Leia and trying to capture Obi-Wan, trying to capture her. It was just, the show was not done, I think, the way that we would have expected it to be done. Sure, there were some very cool moments. How could there not be when you have Darth Vader and Obi-Wan and you have Hayden and Ewan returning? But at the end of the day, it could have been so much more, and that's what I look at. I'm like a really strict parent. It's like, okay, well, you got a B or a C+, but you know what? You could have gotten an A+. And that's how I look at Star Wars today, especially now that it's not in the hands of George. I'm very, very protective of it, and I have my own, sort of strict thinking of, well, why didn't we do this? Why didn't we do that? That's silly. Why would we do, so I'm very, very critical at that point. And I think you need to be as a Star Wars fan, especially in my position where I'm commenting on it and I don't just want to consume and repeat everything going on. So Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think. Do you think we should get an Obi-Wan season 2, or we should get some sort of show or him in a movie or continuing in one of the spin-offs that we're going to get? Love to hear what you think. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Until then, remember, the Force will be with you always.